guys, today I want to talk about my recent DNFs. So DNF stands for did not finish, so I want to talk about all of the books that I recently decided to not finish. So these are books that I started but then realized throughout it that they are just not for me for whatever reason. In the past I included these in my wrap-ups, but the thing is, first of all, I keep forgetting to include them, and then second of all, I mean, sometimes I don't have a lot to say, but sometimes I do have a lot to say, and then I'm kind of mad that I just kind of squeeze them in at the end of the wrap-ups when I actually like want to talk in detail about what I didn't like. So I just thought I would do like a recent DNF video and just do these every time I just have a couple of DNFs and talk about why I decided to DNF the books. This is also because, you know, sometimes I include books in my TBR and then end up DNFing them, and I mean, not that anyone like specifically remembers my TBR, but sometimes I talk about books again and again and then they never show up again because I DNF'd them. And so I don't know, it just gives me this satisfying feeling of closure. So yeah, I just thought I'd talk about these. As I said, sometimes I don't have a lot to say, sometimes it's like super subjective, but I just thought maybe I can warn you about some of these. So first off, I have Da Vinci's Tiger by Elliot. This is a YA historical fiction and I DNF'd this at around 50, I think 54 pages. I just thought that this was very boring and just had flat characters, and as I said, like, this is one of those books where I really don't have a lot to say. I am just very much of this attitude of life is too short for boring books. I definitely could tell that there was a lot of historical research that went into it. I definitely think if you're more interested in the general topic, you might enjoy it, but it just really wasn't for me. Then I have A Cure for the Common Universe by Christian McKay Heidegger. When I put this on my TBR, I already said I'm a little bit scared because while I was initially very excited about this and while I initially put this on my TBR and I was like, oh my god, this is gonna be great, this is my kind of topic, I also have come to not very much enjoy, first of all, books written by men in general, and second of all, books with teenage boy protagonists, especially as this is like a nerdy boy protagonist, because this is about like video gaming and about gaming addiction, and this guy goes to rehab, and so I was scared to pick it up because I tend to not really enjoy these points of views anymore. And I know, like, especially the kind of nerdy video gaming type of people, they are often described in such an annoyingly stereotypical way, which is exactly what happened in this book. So I definitely went into it with pretty low expectations, and everything that I thought would happen kind of happened, and I almost feel like it was even worse. I think I made it 111 pages in, and then I skim read like the last 50 pages or so of the ending because I wanted to see if there's gonna be character development, if this guy will actually develop as a character. Because the issue was not so much that it was like stereotypical or that the guy was like this disgusting kind of teenage boy. It was just that this guy was so egoistic and so in love with himself and just did everything just for his own personal gain. I just thought that through video game rehab, which obviously he does not take seriously at all, that maybe throughout doing it he would actually, you know, learn a thing or two and stop being an asshole, but he did not. Like, it really seems that there's no character development at all. And there was actually a quote that I wrote down that one of the female characters says to this guy, it's not like being a nice guy is a coat of paint that you can just slap on. And that was like a top-notch comment about this character. That was actually, I think, why I was able to get so far into this, because there's a couple of side characters that I really enjoyed, and there were definitely characters that challenged this guy and that kept being like, this is not okay, bro. Like, calm the fuck down. But in the end, it was just not enough to make me push through this book and to, you know, make me push through this horrible point of view. But then also there was a female character in it who just really seemed like a plot device for this guy to realize how wrong he's been this whole time. But still there's no development. This is just kind of like this small realization that he has at the end of the book, but nothing about him really changes. It's just this small thing that makes him think. So yeah, this was nothing that I had hoped it would be and everything that I had feared it would be. I really wanted a book about video gaming addiction and about coping mechanisms. Like really this had so much potential to talk about these kinds of issues. Instead it was just about a kind of sexist teenage boy who really didn't learn from his mistakes at all. So not for me, and like very, very, very much not recommended. Despite its amazing cover, I love this cover so much. And as I said, I love the idea. And if you know of any books that talk about like gaming and like gaming addiction, especially as like coping mechanism, please tell me about them, but this one was not the one. Then I also DNF'd The Midnights by Sarah Nicole Smetana. I think I DNF'd this about a third into it. I think this is just another book that I kind of wanted different things from that it actually offered me. The story is about a girl whose father dies and he was a musician, and she kind of grew up, you know, with him being a musician and like really writing songs herself and everything like that. And I wanted this to deal with that death, but in a way like rediscovering music for herself, rediscovering it as a tool to be close to her father after he's died. I mean, 30% into the book, I think the father only just died. And that was also one of the things that I wasn't really happy with, because I think it took, I mean, this sounds so wrong, like it took too long for the dad to die. But I just thought that it would be more about the aftermath, and it just for me was too much about the before. I just also really didn't think that the relationship between the two was very interesting, so it didn't really make for an interesting story for me personally. In general, I just felt like a lot of the characters did not have a lot of personality and they felt very emotionless. I think that was like my biggest issue. I think this was really about the writing style. I think in the writing it did not really come across the emotions that the characters felt and what they felt, how they felt. And so I think that was my biggest issue, because if a character is grieving, or even if they are like having conflicting feelings about a death, or I don't know, I just want to see their deep, deep emotions. I want to know exactly what they're feeling. And if I don't get that, if I rather actually feel like characters are emotionless, that's just not working for me. But really in general, I just constantly had to force myself to pick it up. I think it took me like a couple of weeks to even get to this third of the book. So I was just like, I'm gonna stop forcing myself to read it and just DNF it. Then I also DNF'd the audiobook of Autonomous by Annalie Newitz. I forgot the name, but it will be on the cover. I DNF'd this like halfway into it, which is a very late point for me to DNF a book. Usually with audiobooks, I really don't DNF them. I always try to push through. So I think for a long time I was telling myself, it's fine, I can get through this, it's just an audiobook. But like 50% into it, I still did not feel anything towards this story. I did not have any feelings towards any of the characters. There was nobody I was rooting for. There was nothing that interested me. I didn't think the concept was interesting, and honestly half of the time I didn't even really pay attention, so I just knew this wasn't for me, and like trying to push myself through another 5 hours of that audiobook did not seem worth it. And finally I DNF'd Set the Stage by Karis Walsh. This is another arc, so this is another one where it took me really long to come to terms with me wanting to DNF it. I DNF'd it at a 36%, and I wanted more from this. I just wanted much, much more from this. This is a romance, and I picked this up because it is a female-female romance, and because one of the characters is an actress and she's part of this Shakespeare company. And so these are like two things that I really, really love, and I was so excited about it. But both of these things fell flat. The theater aspect and the acting aspect was not really there. A lot of the times it would just be the character saying, oh, I just had a really bad rehearsal. Or we would see from the point of view of the other character, we would see the girl acting and kind of, oh yeah, she was really into that scene. But we would never actually see her at a rehearsal. Like, I guess this is this kind of thing of where it was more telling than actually showing. Is that how we say it? Telling? I think that's the one. So I definitely thought that was very disappointing, because I actually wanted to like read from her point of view when she was acting, how she gets into a role and everything, and that was not there at all. Very disappointing. But also the romance. And I could have pushed through this if it had a good romance. Like, sometimes I don't give a shit about the general storyline and the surroundings if the romance is good, especially if it's a female-female romance. But the romance So over a third into this book, both of the characters really liked each other, but because they've both been hurt in the past or they want to concentrate on their current thing, they just did not get together. And it's just so annoying when two characters who already really like each other and who are already involved in each other emotionally, when they constantly talk about how they don't want to be involved with the person because they don't want to get hurt when they are already involved. Like, I don't know how feelings work for you, but for me, even if that person is just a friend, if I'm already in love with that person has a lot of power over my feelings and they will be able to hurt me. So might as well use the opportunity, if you like each other, to just get together, do the thing, and then end up being hurt. But at least that was a good time before you get hurt. I don't know. Oh my god, I'm just realizing how mad I was about that. Especially, as I said, because it took over a third. Like, a third into it, over a third into it, still these same thoughts. Like, that's also the thing. That's how it started. Like, they both were like very upfront about this. They were like, not interested, fine. But then, like, you would think something would develop and like maybe they would kiss and they were like, oh, that was a mistake. Like a little bit of like angst and like, oh no, nothing. It was like all the same, and I just didn't care for that. I wanted a romance and I didn't get that. And this book really isn't long, but at that point I was already bored. So I was like, I'm not gonna bother. So yeah, these are all of the books that I recently DNF'd and why I DNF'd them. And now I obviously want to know if you have read any of these, if you maybe really love them, or if you also DNF'd them, or if you finished them and you wish you had DNF'd them, or if there's any of these books that you had planned to read that maybe now you don't want to read anymore, or maybe there's even one in here where now you're like interested in it. Who knows? I just want to know your thoughts on any of these books, and thank you so much for watching. I guess I'll see you soon. Bye!